welcome once again to the Town Crier, the program that keeps you informed. I was sick last week, and that's why we had a rerun. I could have brought an excuse from Dr. Mickelson, but now that I'm a big boy, I don't have to do that anymore. But we're going to make up for it tonight. We're going to have a very good program. It's going to be a fun evening, a conversation with an old friend, Miss Annelore Harrell.
Good evening, Tommy.
And by that I mean a friend of long standing, not an old person.
Whatever.
All right, Miss Annelore, you and I have a lot in common in that you have spent practically all of the summers of your life at Bluffton. I've spent just about all of them of my life at Bluffton. You were away from Bluffton for a while your husband was in the Army.
That's right.
And
almost 30 years.
Right. And y'all traveled around the world, particularly in Germany and Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And
always came back here though, Tommy, for home leave.
Right. And you retired 15, 20 years ago?
Let's see. We retired. We moved here in Bluffton. We bought in 79, moved in 81, and he retired in 83. So it hadn't been
that long.
It hasn't.
83, that's 12 years though.
Ooh, it slips up on you, doesn't it?
12 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Blink
Now,
your eyes.
over the last 6 months or so, I've been having people on the show. We've been talking about the Bluffton that used to be and the Bluffton that's going to be, and the future for Americans, for individuals. And I'd like to just have a general conversation with you about Bluffton, about South Carolina, about America, about Annelore Harrell, about anything you want to talk about. Wherever the Spirit leads us, that's where we'll go.
Sounds like fun to me, Tommy.
Miss Annelore, for those of you who may not know, is one of our leading salespersons of real estate. This is probably a commercial, so Mr. Ward will have to sue us. But in the 12, 13 years that you've been actively involved in real estate, have prices gone up in Bluffton?
Just a tad. Just a tad. We could not, on retired Army pay, have afforded to buy where we are now, Tommy. The house that we bought in 1979 was affordable, just, with all the children in
more than double
school.
in value.
Yeah, it really has. It really has. And it's not, I always say that my house is not old enough to be historically interesting, and it's not new enough to be insulated nicely. I heat the inside of my house about 10 feet around the outside of my house, but we like it because it's where we want to be. And
Did you buy the Wackermans place?
We bought Dr. Wackerman's house. Never met him.
Well, he was
Never
a
met
fine
him.
old
Never.
gentleman.
We bought that house on the telephone from his son-in-law in North Carolina, and I don't think we were in that house 15 minutes before we signed the papers and moved in. I didn't even know I had a cottage until after we came back down. I didn't care. I just wanted to be there.
And you had spent all your summers down at the end of Myrtle Island on the right.
That's right. Yeah, down at the very
Stelz's.
end. Right. Mm-hmm.
Where your mother is now.
That's
or is
right.
your mother with you?
No, Mother's living in her own house, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I took her to Savannah today. She bought some carpeting for her son Paula, and she's all by herself and doing well.
Another thing that you're very much involved in is the League of Women Voters. Did you do that before you retired, or is this something that you just...
No, this comes from having a daughter who just decides that you're going to get involved, and we did... Tamla. We did not have a League of Women Voters in Bluffton, and Tamla decided that we should, and so she got Mary Connor and her mother Mary O'Merrick, and I was there with Tamla. We had a lot of mother-daughter combinations, and our organizational meeting was at the Church of the Cross, and Tamla set up a card table out on the lawn, and as people would come up, she'd say, "You going inside, you going to join?" And
I was one of those she hooked $25.
There you go. It's gone up. It's now 35.
And Hanky Cram and a few others.
That's right.
Well, last night on the news, Pamela pitched a a book, and I see you have one with you here
I
now.
pitched it tonight, as a matter of fact, New Year's Day.
Well, that's a good source of information. So many people have just moved into South Carolina from other states, and the mechanics of their political apparatus is a little different from ours. And it's a good book to get and learn.
Well, we're hoping too that the league will, the league's involved in trying to get changes made within the legislature. There's been a lot of reform, and I know you're aware that they recently had a restructuring within the system. And one of the interesting things to come out of that, Tommy, is the importance of the Parks, Tourist and Recreation Department, which before had been a rather minor department, has now become quite an empire-building department, because tourism is a very
It's a big industry.
Big industry in the state of South Carolina, and will continue to be as more people come through here. So I found that interesting. But I want to tell you one thing that happened with that, Tommy. I was in Columbia one day at a meeting when they were listening to people talk about where they would like to be in the restructuring. And this delightful lady had come up from Charleston with a driver, and she was quite elegantly dressed, and she sat there, and they said, and I think she was in charge of the old Exchange building in Charleston, and they asked her under which department she would like them to be, and she said, well, and it was sort of like, Miss Caroline, where would you like to be? And she said, well, we've gotten along all these years quite well on our own, and I think really you should just leave us alone. And I think that they did.
Well, that's good. It made good sense, didn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Another thing this restructuring has done, and I'm really surprised you hear very little about it, either pro or con. But for the first time, South Carolina's governor has some real oomph now, which is great if he's your man, which is not so great if he's not your man.
Cabinet appointees.
Yeah, but see, up until this restructuring, our governor, even though Carol Campbell, tried to make it into an executive position, our governor's been mostly a ceremonial job. I mean, that might be putting it a little bit mildly, but this has been a legislative state.
Yes.
And now, under the new rules, the governor has a tremendous amount of power.
Yes, he does.
And that's great as long as he uses it properly.
There's always the danger, you're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place as to how you're choosing to run your government. So when you elect this man to lead the people of South Carolina, you're under the cabinet method, you're giving him a great deal of power, and I don't know whether people are aware of exactly how many departments there are, and it just goes, it takes up, folks, half a page of single space, so, I mean, that is a lot, you see.
Yes. And the governor appoints all of them. They all work directly under him.
Right. And then they are also, the league is also interested, and I'm sure everybody else is too, in the selection of judges and how that's done or being done and how it continues to be done, whether it's on a meritability or a favoritism.
Well, it worked real well in the past, but in fairness, you have to say that in the last 15, 20 years, maybe the last 25 years, it hadn't worked too good. And I think it's because we've changed. We've changed as a people, as a state, as a nation, we've changed. And, you know, a judgeship ought to be the crowning cap or the end of a distinguished judicial legal career.
Well, you know, Tommy, being around.
Some of our judges nowadays have a lot to be desired. That's a shame to have to say that, or to even say that, but it's true.
Well, there are good judges and bad judges, and just like with anything, and it's been my feeling that the different kinds of judges, of course. I know Janet Butcher right now is in Columbia. She had been town attorney on Hilton Head. Did you know Janet?
I
I'm
knew
sure
of her.
yeah. Well, she moved to Columbia, and she had been working in the social service, DSS, and I think she's being considered now for a judge in that field, and that is her background, and she would be very good at that. But she, although she has had some experience in the adversarial field, I don't know how good she would be in a criminal court. Maybe she would be excellent, but you know, they're just all different sorts of courts, and they're all different sorts of attorneys, and they all have to find their niche. I don't think you would want a judge in a criminal court who's not had experience as a trial judge, as a trial attorney. I don't know. Maybe that would work. I'm not really sure it would.
Well, judge, in my opinion, I'm certainly no legal scholar, but in my opinion, he's there to see that things are done properly, legally, and fairly.
That's right.
Fair to the people and fair to the poor defendant.
According to the procedure and the rules, yeah.
Right, everything done fairly.
Right.
That's something I want to get into after a while, is fairness. That's a word that was invented by lawyers, you know that.
I can just tell you that being originally from Savannah, Oglethorpe didn't allow 3 things. And one of them was attorneys.
That's right. What were the other 2?
Rum and slaves.
Well, I don't know.
Rum, slaves, and lawyers. Those were the 3 no-nos as far as he was concerned. I'm not really sure why lawyers.
What are some of the other things the League of Women Voters is interested in Columbia? One thing about the judge. I won't interrupt you again.
Go ahead.
One of the problems they had with the judges was people who had no shame. You couldn't embarrass them. Mm-hmm. And they were sitting in the House of Representatives or in the Senate, and they'd say, well, I'd like to be a judge, and their friends would elect them as judge.
That's right.
And now we want to get that changed.
And have them appointed on the basis of merit.
Merit.
You know, if you qualify, then you can do it. If you don't qualify, you shouldn't. I don't think being a judge should be your beginner's on-the-job training. I think you should know a little bit of what you're doing before you go in.
What about, do you think judges should be appointed for life, or they should be appointed for a set term and have to be reappointed?
I think it depends on the kind of judge. Again, Tommy, I think if a man is going to be a federal district judge, for example, I see no reason why he shouldn't be appointed for life, because to be qualified for that particular position, you must pass so many criteria that there's no reason why you can't go on as long as you're mentally and physically able.
The reason for appointing them for life was so they wouldn't have any political influence.
That's right.
You can't fire one.
What is that phrase they use when you're in your lame duck?
Right.
So you can't be a
right,
lame
and
duck.
you can't bring any political influence over them because you know, they're not running for office, and you can't fire, and you can't diminish their salary.
Well, I can't speak that much to civilian judges, but since George William was a military judge for 13, 14, 15 years, however long, I certainly think that I know a little bit about that. And one of the things that the military does, and I like their system of justice, I think it's swift and to the point, but their judges are appointed in effect, and they are assigned to the judiciary in Washington with a duty station at a particular place. And the reason for that is so that the commanding general, wherever they are, can't affect a decision on a particular case. Now, that's not to say realistically that if a general doesn't like a particular judge under his command that he can't make a few phone calls and that judge might find himself stationed somewhere else. But overall, command influence is obliterated by this particular system. And they also have, as I assume they do in the civilian world, sort of undercourt judges that deal with minor offenses, and general court martial judges who deal with the usual rape, loot, and plunder. So, and then they have a senior judge who oversees all of it. So the system, I think, in the military is excellent. And
well, if I were the emperor, if I were designing the system, I would have different courts for different things.
mm-hmm.
And when it comes to capital crimes, I would have a capital court. And I would have specially trained judges, specially trained prosecutors, specially trained defense attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a bankruptcy lawyer ought not be able to go in and defend somebody for murder. You know.
Well, yes.
But I would have also specially educated and trained jurors. That might be a little bit tricky, but that's, if I were the emperor, that's what I'd have. And
who's going to determine the crimes and what are considered major and what are considered minor? You're going to determine that?
No, a capital crime is one that you can lose your life over.
Okay.
That's one you can be executed for.
And is that killing a deer in the king's forest?
No. I'm talking about, aggravated crimes like murder.
Okay.
And bombing.
That's what I'm saying. Are you going to determine what capital crime
Well, the government does that. The government
But you just said if
that.
I'm emperor.
If I were the emperor, yes, I would be the
emperor would
governor.
decide, right? You would be the governor. You would write out this list of, this laundry list of things.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's what emperors do.
I agree.
And, we smile and joke about it, but the most efficient form of government is a nice, benevolent dictator.
I agree with that all damn
As
right.
long as he's got all of his senses, and as long as he's benevolent, and, hey, it's wonderful.
Well, they usually have a grand vizier who's a ugly guy.
He does
Off with his head.
act,
Off with his head. Right.
All right.
I'm not really sure how you would train your jurors. I mean.
Well, there are people, unfortunately, you can register to vote. There are no qualifications other than residence. Okay? You have to be 18 and a resident of the state. Okay? To get a South Carolina driver's license, you can pass a little written test that anybody with an IQ of 65 can pass.
It's like a fun game,
Okay.
isn't it?
And you go out and you drive your car, and unless you really screw up big time, somewhere between the first and the third time you're going to pass. Okay, which means that not severely retarded people, but mildly retarded people can drive. Okay? As long as you have good eyesight and you can reach the pedals, you can drive. Now, I say that to say this. The two things that they draw the jurors from is the voter registration list and the driver's license list. Okay? So, as a result, we have some people that sit on juries in civil cases that, determine a lot of money that, that are not really capable of determining that. And we have people that sit on criminal cases capital cases that don't know what a capital crime is. You know, they're not very bright. And as a result,
Well,
it's
there
whose
is-
lawyer
there
can
is-
fool who.
Well, I know, but there is still,
And
you know,
justice is not
attorney-
always done.
I
And if
know.
there's any reason in the world, I mean, I'm not
But the
against.
attorneys can challenge, and they
Right.
can interrogate the possible jurors, so
I am
it's
not
on the back
opposed
of
to
the attorneys.
capital punishment, but I think it needs to be refined to where the likelihood of a person being found guilty when he's really innocent is almost eliminated. Okay, you'll never eliminate it entirely.
No,
but,
someone's always gonna get caught,
Right, but
in the crime.
we would much rather never ever send an innocent person to the electric chair or the gas chamber or the gallows or the firing squad, you know. And
Tommy, do you go along with this business about people on death row, but being there for like 10 years
No, it ought to be
with all
handled in a
their
year.
appeals, and
if you had a special
and you
court,
and I are paying for that,
Yeah.
you know.
well, the paying doesn't bother me.
But
I
it
think
bothers
I
me
think
because I could spend that money
there are two
somewhere
reasons
much
why
more worthwhile.
there are two reasons why I support the death penalty. Number one is that it eliminates that heinous fiend from ever committing that kind of crime again. Okay, that
That's a
particular
fact.
person won't be doing that again. The other thing is that I think that properly done, it is a deterrent.
What do you mean properly done? Do it in
But-
the courthouse square and
well-
hang him and let everybody watch? Or?
Well, go from one extreme to the other. There are people that have gone 20 years on death row, and by the time
Yes.
that they are executed, nobody except the immediate family remembers what they did. So it's not
Or
a
the
deterrent to
girlfriend, or
anybody.
the woman that they married while they've been in prison.
Yeah, I mean that's foolishness. But on the other end of the extreme is that Mr. Bruno Hoffman, who people are still today arguing whether he did or did not kidnap the Lindbergh baby, 32 days after he was found guilty, he was electrocuted.
I never even.
Now that's the other end of the extreme.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. Now somewhere between 32 days and 20 years, there would be Tommy Heyward's balance of 1 year.
Well, do you think this should be different from a state decision? It should be a federal decision.
No.
It should be a state decision.
I think it should be a state thing because I believe that the people in Texas or the people in Michigan may have different ideas about what a death penalty should be issued for.
And how do you think should it just go through the legislature?
Yeah.
Not brought up on a referendum.
No, I think that pure democracy doesn't work. Okay? So we have a republic, and that is we elect representatives to make decisions for us. Okay? And that way we don't have to go vote every day on a referendum. And we elect a legislature. You know, most states have a Senate and a House just like we have in Washington. And the states have governors that are in the executive position. Most of
With
those
the right of veto.
Right. Most of those governors have vetoes, which can be overridden, just like in the federal situation. And those people are close to the community. They all serve their little district, like Scott Richardson serves us, and Juanita White serves the other part of Beaufort County, and Mr. Kaiserling serves his part of Beaufort County. And people have access to them. Okay? So they tell them what kind of government they want and what kind of laws they want passed and what should and should not be a crime. So they go to Columbia or Tallahassee or wherever it happens to be, and they pass the laws that govern that state. And as long as those laws conform to your overall federal rights under the federal Constitution, then those laws are perfectly legal, and you have to abide by them in the several states.
One of the speakers that we had at the State League's convention was Don Beatty, who is head of the Black Caucus in Columbia, and he was very interesting and said several amusing things, one of which was that when a state representative gets into the House, all of a sudden he forgets that he is supposed to represent the people. All of a sudden he feels the power, and he forgets that he is supposed to be doing what these people want him to do.
Well, did you happen to see Speaker Gingrich make his speech last night on C-SPAN?
No, I did not.
I started to call you. I started to call you and ask you to watch it because I wanted to discuss it with you tonight.
I wish you had.
He was introduced as a revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
He was speaking to the Republican Political Action Committee, GOPAC.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, he was preaching to the choir. He made a very, very good speech, in my opinion.
I have never read all of his contract for America either. I'm ashamed to say I've read pieces of it, but not the whole bit, Tommy.
What they did is they came up with 10 things, and they said, we will bring these to a vote, and we will vote on them. And they brought them to a vote, and they did vote on them, and everything except term limits, I think it was.
Oh,
passed.
yes, that's right. Of course, Bob Inglis, who's Helen and Al's child, was very pro-term limits. What do you feel about term limits in the House?
I think
and
we
the
have
Senate?
the best term limits in the world.
I agree.
I think we have the right to go down every 2 years and eliminate that term.
That's right.
And
you don't think the incumbent, because of all the power that he's accumulated and the monies that he's accumulated, has an unfair advantage over anybody coming up?
I
mean,
don't.
that's one of the things that they say, isn't it? Isn't that one of the main reasons for trying to put on quote term limits?
But you know, Harry Cram was a very dear friend of our family and sort of like a second father to me. And by the way, Mr. Ward, did we tell everybody that Hanky Cram and Rachel had the baby? Was that on the news?
Eloise, isn't that the name of the child? Little girl,
All right.
Eloise.
And father's doing well? Okay. That shows you I wasn't watching the news. But one of the things that Mr. Harry used to tell us when we were bad, and we'd say, well, we didn't mean to let the horse out, or we didn't mean to leave the gate open. And as he was paddling behind, he would say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's true.
There's
I
also
think
another
they
one, no
mean
good
well.
deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, I think they mean well, but I think really that sometimes we don't use our clout, we don't use our political power like we should. I mean, I love to get involved in politics, and I love to go vote. You know, I love to talk and see how you feel about things and tell you how I feel about things. It's in my genes. But most people don't, and that's a shame, because their future right now is being decided by people they don't know.
Do you feel, Tommy, sometimes that people become just too insulated? You know, the whole world is right here, and it's wonderful to be family-oriented, and I think you and I both are very family-oriented. But the outside world is there, and it is going to make an impact on us whether we want it to or not, and you can't ignore it. It's not going to go away.
Oh, it's not going to go away. The Congress of the United States right now is making decisions that are going to affect you and are going to affect me and ultimately everybody in this nation in a big way. Okay?
And I kind of think I know what you're leading up
A
to.
big way.
Big way.
And
That's
they're
right.
going to throw states. And they're going to say Bluffton, South Carolina, Beaufort County, South Carolina. We think Head Start is a wonderful program,
Why don't you take
and we
it?
want y'all to continue it, but we're out.
That's right. You pay for it if you want it.
Right, we're out.
That's right.
They're going to say Beaufort County. We hope that y'all continue with your Waddell Mariculture Center and your other federally funded projects, but we're out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we helped you get in, but we're out.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that the federal government is going to scale back on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listened to the speech last night, you'd learn some things. Medicare, which is the primary insurance for all Social Security recipients. So you would have to be 62 or older to be eligible for Medicare. But Medicare, that has been a godsend for people,
Tell me about it.
is scheduled on its present course to go flat broke in 7 years.
Yep.
They are going to fix it,
What do you mean?
but
they're
they're not
fix it?
going to fix it by raising taxes.
All right. I'm waiting.
Okay?
Okay.
And they are not going to a Canadian-style single-payer or socialistic health care system. They're not going to do that. So what are they going to do? Well, the spirit of America, the engine of America, has been the entrepreneurial, free enterprise spirit of our people.
Well, it used to be, Tony.
Well, that's what it's been for 250 years. You know, we say things to ourselves, and we say them so many times until after a while we begin to believe them. And we tell our little children we came over here so we could worship like we wanted to and all these kind of things. But the truth is, people came to America 200 years ago for the same reason they come today, for economic opportunity.
That's right.
Okay? Because this is the place where if you apply yourself, you can succeed. And if you own the right game plan, you can prosper in America. I mean, you can see the boat people come over with a pair of tennis shoes and some shorts, and first thing you know, they prosper.
Yeah, they're doing those
And,
jobs that other people say they're too good to do.
Right.
And there's always a need for those services.
You take the Italians that came over and the Irish that came over at the turn of the century, 100 years ago. They came over and they said, well, I'll work. I'll do this so my son can go to school. And they did. And they worked. And they sweated, and their sons went to school. And then those sons said, I'll work, and I'll do my best, and my son will go to college. And now their sons are our congressmen.
I
That's
think
the
James
American spirit.
Michener in his book Hawaii probably explains that with the development of Hawaii just as good as anybody can in one volume.
And I think what Congress is going to do, and you can't ever tell about the Senate, but from Gingrich's speech last night, from other things I've read, is they are slowly, over a period of 5 or 6 years, they're going to privatize Medicare. They're going to offer people a package of better benefits for less money through the private sector. And they will eliminate thousands, tens of thousands of government bureaucrats in the process.
Tell me, the whole medical field has changed. If you'll just take any newspaper, any day of the week, and go through it and see the ads for medical services,
Well, it's become an industry.
it boggles the mind. I mean, you know, I don't remember in the past seeing ads for doctors or clinics or whatever in the newspaper. It wasn't done. And
Mr. Ward, hold up the back of the Bluffton phone book over there.
what we got here?
Well, excuse me, that's a O.C. Welch. I thought there's another one over there that says accident attorney. What's that on? Is it Savannah book? There you go. This is a Savannah book. Y'all can get a picture of this.
Accident attorney,
This will be
Lance
a commercial for Mr. Lance Smith. I know he's
no
ex-wife.
fees unless
But,
you collect.
Yeah, and that's
Now
Mr.
that
Smith and his
really
new wife or
was
his new
a
assistant.
no-no.
Now,
You didn't do
Well,
that.
it won't be long before doctors will be advertising on the back of the phone book, and they'll be saying, get your tonsils out at Cheap Eddie's cut rate doc in a box.
Tommy, how many
clinic.
doctors own their own practice anymore?
They sold them out in anticipation of the socialized takeover, and they got surprised.
So now what happens?
You know, you always try to be one step ahead
That's
of
right.
things.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they were selling them out, boy. They were, to beat the band.
Yeah.
And they made money, and that's great. But everybody just knew that the Clinton healthcare thing was going to be a done deal.
Never try to second guess a jury.
And
What is that other one? It ain't over until.
until it's over.
That's right.
That's what Yogi
So
said.
you're saying it was a bad call? Some of these people.
And some of them made career decisions. And
Wonder how did the medical insurance for some of these doctors that have been paying individually now come out as far as they're within a group? Is the amount of insurance that they have to pay less?
I don't know. I'll have to ask some of my doctor
I mean,
friends.
assuming that the individual physician doesn't pay it and the group pays it for him, I'm just wondering if you have an organization composed of various physicians and you take how much he paid individually and now you take how much they're paying for him collectively, whether there's a huge difference or not.
Well, they need to have good coverage now, and I don't, I'm not. I try not to be a reactionary because people in Bluffton have heard me say forever and ever, the truth is never way out on the right and it's never way out on the left. It's somewhere close in the middle. Okay? And there are genuine cases where doctors need to be sued. And there are genuine cases where doctors need to be put in jail. There was a thing on ABC News tonight where they took the man's wrong lung out. He was supposed to take his left lung out, took his right lung out, and the man died.
Oh, I love what George Williams did when I was going to
somebody
have
ought
an
to go to
operation.
jail on that.
Tommy, he went up to the surgeon and he backed the surgeon up against the wall and he said, "You're going to operate on my wife this morning and I won't sue you if something happens to her, but I'll get you." I had the best care. That surgeon even called me at home after I went home to find out how I was doing.
Well, I think that, again, if I were the emperor, and you'd have to be the emperor to do a lot of the things I would want to do, along with a civil liability, I would give some of these doctors some criminal liability. Because I think that if you go in and take the wrong lung out of a person and cause them to die, you have killed them. And you should not be a doctor again.
But I'm sure you've signed a paper beforehand saying if anything goes wrong, you hold them blameless, Tommy.
Well, that's no good. But what I'm saying is, when they do something like that, they could maybe rake leaves, or they could work on a golf course, or they could be a tennis pro, or they could be a cook, or they could make beds at a motel, but they should never ever be allowed to be a doctor again. Now, if you had those kind of penalties attached, where they really had to worry, because who cares if the insurance company pays off? You know, I mean, hey, that's why we pay the premiums. So, if you had some real teeth, then they would say, hey, y'all sure it's the left lung, you know?
Well, you're
I mean,
saying
they
though,
check that
Tommy, that
thing
if you
twice.
mess up, if you have a job and you mess up one time,
If it
one time.
costs somebody's life, yeah. Yeah.
well then, you know, how
Yeah.
you gonna get people to be body mechanics?
You know,
I
one
mean,
of the jobs,
they don't wanna
one
do
of the
it.
things I wanted to ask you before I hope we don't go too far over time tonight, but one of the things I wanted to ask you was about affirmative action, because that's coming up. Congress is going to pretty well eliminate affirmative action, and there are a lot of people that are hooping and hollering. A lot of the feminist groups, a lot of the minority groups, even though none of them have really benefited from affirmative action, they think they have, so they're going to hoop and holler, and they're already hooping and hollering. You know, everybody's got an advocate. You know,
That's
30
why
years
they
ago,
have lobbyists. I think you should have been.
30
You've been a wonderful
30
lobbyist. Tommy.
years ago,
Yes,
and I'm getting this from
that's 1965. Okay.
30 years ago. Well,
65. Vietnam War.
1963, when John F. Kennedy was president,
All right, just
Okay.
before, yeah.
there were 1,600 lobbyists in Washington, D.C. There were 1,600 registered lobbyists in Washington, D.C.
That's not very many.
There are
Is it?
60,000 registered lobbyists in Washington, D.C.
But see, when there were 1,600 registered, there were a lot that weren't, right?
Yeah, they were called senators. They were called members of the House.
Well,
That's my lobbyist.
okay.
You know.
Yeah, well,
Oh.
supposed to be, but he
Yeah.
can't be a lobbyist because a lobbyist has to support only one position, and a
Oh,
senator is
no.
supposed.
These people support all sorts of things.
No. I mean, one position on an issue. I mean,
Oh,
he
yeah.
can't go in and say I'm for this and against it at the same time. He's paid by somebody. Oh, I want to tell you a good example of a lobbyist, successful lobbyist. Okay, or a lobbying group. I found out. Let me ask you: did you know that every time you bought a soda fountain drink, you were paying a tax, a special tax that had been levied on the syrup used to make that soda fountain drink?
No, I didn't until you told me.
All right, well, I just told you that. And this lobbying group got in there, and they have now eliminated that tax, which means that now, all things being equal, your soda fountain drink should be less expensive. But it also took away over $14 million a year worth of income for the state of South Carolina.
Well, we're
I
going to
didn't
make
hear
that up
anything
on
about
Barnwell,
it.
aren't we?
Oh, please.
I'm going to talk about that in a minute.
Oh,
But
Tommy.
I wanted to talk about affirmative action just for about 30 seconds. I want to tell you a job that does not have affirmative action.
All right.
That's the left seat of a jet aircraft hauling passengers or property for hire,
Okay.
a commercial pilot.
All right.
Every 6 months, his job, his career, his life, his future is on the line.
Why every 6 months? Why not
Because
every?
every 6 months he has to do two things.
Okay.
He has to pass a very stringent first-class medical examination,
Mm-hmm.
and he has to pass a practical flying test in the aircraft that he is going to fly. Okay?
And who sets
Now,
up all this? The
The FAA.
Okay.
Okay? Now, if he fails, he's through.
No recourse.
No, he's through.
Okay.
Now,
For that plane or forever flying?
would you hire someone that had failed?
Maybe to fly a helicopter. I don't know.
No. Not even, no. He's through. Okay?
All right.
Now,
I don't like to fly anywhere, Tommy.
That means that only the best get those jobs and keep those jobs.
Assuming that the guy who tests him is unbribable, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I've been in it 30 years, and I've never known of anyone that would even come close to accepting a Coca-Cola from me.
Gotcha. All right.
They're very
pure
about that.
All right.
They would fail their brother or their mother.
Okay.
And they're really looking
Sounds
for
like
something to
they're
fail you. But
branch brothers of the IRS.
they're close.
Okay.
They're close. But the thing I'm saying is that there is no affirmative action there, and we don't want any there. Okay? We certainly don't want any there. We don't want any in the NFL either, do we?
I'm not that much of a football player, but
Nor
no,
the
I'll
NBA.
say no. I do
No,
like
you know, we
basketball.
don't even want any of these poor boys over here on the minor league teams. We don't want them to ever get a chance to go to the majors. We want the majors to come back and play ball for us. You know, we don't want anything to do with affirmative action there. But yet, when it comes to things that are important, like teaching our children, or health care, or enforcing the law, or emergency services, then we have affirmative action there. We don't always guarantee that the best person gets the job, because we have to have so many women, we have to have so many minorities of several different groups, you know. And until America gets back to the best person,
Merit.
the best person, regardless of who that person is, you know, if it's a Vietnamese refugee, if he's the best person or she's the best person, then she gets the job. You know, that's what made America great.
That's right.
Now let's talk a couple minutes that we got left. Let's talk about the Barnwell situation. You're up to speed on that.
Well, I've been briefed on it. I don't think I know as much as I should about it, but I'm upset about it. And I'm upset because it seems to me that people have not kept their word. Well, Tommy, I mean, you know, I think a man's word is his honor.
Absolutely.
And I get upset when people say something and then they don't stand. If you don't believe it, don't say it. Don't tell me.
That's when we should exercise term limits, isn't it?
Or vote the guy out.
Vote them out.
Vote him out.
You know, we should not vote for Holly Court simply because she's a woman. But I guarantee, and Holly, I hope you're watching,
No,
because this is
no.
not intended to be a slap in your face because I'm on your team. Don't be upset. But I guarantee you that at least 40% of the people that voted for Holly Court voted for her because she was a woman.
I don't think that that's totally true, but it's
Well,
partially.
39.9.
It's partially
Okay.
true.
Well,
but
what I'm
I
saying
think
is
that somebody aggravated
we
a
should-
large group of the population, and so they reacted to it.
we
But-
should exercise our term limit rights on these Barnwell people.
Well, it may be too late. That's the only problem. And what they're doing now, Tommy, that distresses me totally is they're holding the carrot in front of us, and the carrot being money. And evidently, for those who don't know, and I can only assume that everybody does know, but I'm going to say it anyway. There was a group of states in the Southeast that got together a while back, and they said, okay, guys, we've got this nuclear waste from hospitals and from wherever, and we need some place to put it. And if we all kind of take turns with it, then nobody's going to get stuck with it forever and ever, amen. And South Carolina took their turn, and they put all the stuff at Barnwell. And their time was to be ended December of this year. And it was North Carolina's time Next, well, all of a sudden, our governor says we can make $140 million a year by taking in this waste from Chem Nuclear. Okay? So North Carolina's listening. They're no dummies. They're listening over there and reading our newspapers. They say, hey, those guys over there in Columbia are talking about the money. Why should we spend the money on building a site to take this stuff if they're going to keep it? Okay? So they haven't done anything much. They've spent some money researching, but they've not built anything to take it over. So now the latest thing is they're saying we will get, and this is where two terms come into effect, Tommy, recurring and non-recurring. They're saying we could get $140 million a year, and we will spend it on education. And we will eliminate the property tax, and we'll get it back through this. But the deal is that they would give the money to education on a non-recurring basis. In other words, it would be designated 1 year, with nothing to say if they kept it up what they'd spend it on the next year.
Well, the whole thing is an illusion. The older I get, the more I'm convinced that life is an illusion. You know, you think you see one thing and you actually don't see that. Mr. Copperfield was on television last night. Did you see him?
No.
He's the king of illusionists.
Yes.
But and he even tells you it's an illusion, but you know better.
Well, you've had 3 witnesses to an accident. You get 3 different stories.
Right. But the Excellence in Education Act that everybody is so sworn to uphold and everything, that thing is so sorrily written. It demands certain levels of money, but it doesn't say what the money's going to be used for. You know, and money is not the answer to all of our dilemmas. Not the answer. But the Barnwell thing, to correct you a while ago, it wasn't supposed to close last December.
No,
it was
coming this December.
Okay, it was supposed to close about 5 or 6 years ago, back in the 80s. And they extended it 2 years, and then they extended it another year, and then they extended it another year. Right. Well, I knew last year when they said it's definitely going to close, you know, in December of 95, it's going to close. Well, I knew they were joking. That's why I'm not upset, because I knew that they weren't leveling with us to begin with. And another thing is that a lot of the waste that is stored there really doesn't have to be stored at all. Up until a few years ago, they just, you know, incinerated it. And there wasn't any adverse effects from it.
Well,
you know, a lot of the stuff there is X-ray film and, you know, stuff like that. I mean,
that's true.
Medical.
But I tell you, Mary Kelly has been over to the plant, and she said, if they tell you that it's not dangerous, she said, then I'm wondering why they wear these gloves, protective gloves. They stand behind glass and they handle this stuff. Some of this stuff, they're getting nuclear rods and all this stuff. They're telling me, not just hospital waste.
Now that's stored in a different place.
Well, that's true, but
that's not at the Barnwell dump.
But at the Barnwell
dump is low level.
Right, 100-year and 500-year stuff.
Now, a little bit of it, you could store it right here in the room and it wouldn't hurt you. Okay? But when you get tons of it all concentrated in one place, that's when it becomes a serious environmental problem.
Yes, it does. And money is not going to change.
And that's why South Carolina they've really taken advantage of us, and
I wish you and I had time to talk about
we have prostituted ourselves. Well, let's talk about it. We got 5 minutes.
All right. Well, you know,
see the clock right there.
Our governor is going to cut off the property tax, and this is supposedly going to benefit all South Carolinians, and I'm sure that most people understand that pretty much half of the property in South Carolina is valued at under $35,000.
I didn't know that, but that's probably true.
Well, actually, it's 52%. But at any rate, that was a figure that I was given by Don Beatty, and if he's wrong, then I'm wrong, because I'm taking his figures. But he was basically saying that if the property tax were eliminated in a lot of these homes, it would mean probably a savings to that house and property tax of, maybe $200 a year on some of these houses. And yet, if they were to put in a raise in the sales tax, those people have to buy a lot of things, and they would be spending a lot more on tax than they would be saving in a property tax. But someone on $100,000 or $200,000 home would be saving a fairly considerable amount.
I don't think you have to worry about the property tax being eliminated. It's one of those things that they've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it, knowing that they couldn't accomplish it, and now the people that have been doing the talking are empty.
Okay.
All right, and that is our program for this evening. We sort of rambled on. I hope we didn't bore anybody, but I certainly have enjoyed it. The conversation with Annelore Harrell, and we'll see you next time on the Town Crier, the program that keeps you informed. Good night.